and some international organizations as well. So I think that we should go straight on to the sessions. So among the companies and organizations represented in this first session are our partners, CFLP, NDRC, ACEA, which is the European Car Makers Association, and the Chinese Automotive Dealers Association. So we're getting a very wide opening to help us understand where the market is now, where the industry is now, and how it will be developing in the future. It will give us a great platform to start from here to build for the next 2 days of great sessions, discussions, networking, and conference. But I'd like to welcome to the stage our first speaker of the day and our great partners from CFLP, Mr. Cai Jin, Vice President of the China Federation of Logistics and Purchasing. Mr. Cai.
女士们、先生们，各位来宾，上午好。非常高兴代表中国物流与采购联合会，向参加今天中国国际汽车物流会议的各位来宾表示欢迎。那么，按照大会的主办方的要求和安排，让我在这和大家一起来沟通一下当前中国经济的一些运行的情况和未来的一些发展的趋势。因为这个对于中国的汽车的发展来讲乃至对全球的汽车发展来讲的话，应该说是一个非常重要的一个发展的环境所以说非常荣幸能够在今天就中国经济发展的话题和大家一起来交流。那么从今天的这个上午国家统计局将要召开一个记者的招待会在这个会上的话国家统计局将会发布中国一季度的今年一季度的这个经济运行的一些数据和它的一些发展的情况这个呢也敬请各位有时间的话去关注一下这个发布会的一些有关的数据和它的一些有关的对中国经济有关的一些分析。那么就我们所掌握的情况，因为中国物流与采购联合会也做了一项对中国经济景气分析的一项工作，叫做叫做采购经理人指数这个国际上也比较通用，叫 PMI。那么我们也结合这些有关的数据吧，谈谈我们对当前中国经济运行的一些看法。总的来说，从我们所掌握的数据情况看，当然同时在另外一个地方开的这个统计局的这个会议情况将会公布。总的来讲，一季度的运行情况来讲，从增长的速度上来看的话，是有所回落的这是大家形成的一个普遍的一个看法数据上也有一些也是支持了这么一个回落的这么一个运行趋势。但是我们从这个回落过程中间，也要把握住中国经济发展的一些实质性的一些它的一些本质性的一些东西。我们认为，在当前的经济运行过程中间，中国的经济运行过程中间，我们认为应该有这么3个方面的把握或者是一些看法。一个呢，就是经济运行虽然是在下滑，但是总体上来讲，中国经济运行还是保持在一个适度合理的区间数据没有出来因为这个 GDP 的增长数据是今天他们的这个统计局发布，但是我们想的话，从我们所把握的数据来看中国的经济PMI 指数3月份还是在50.3的这么一个水平，还在50以上，而且比2月份在回升。所以说，总的中国经济增长的话，还是保持在一个平稳适度的一个增长区间。那么从增长速度来看，应该是在7%到7.5这个增长速度是没有问题的这是一个概念。那么我们从动态的角度去把握中国经济的运行，当前中国经济的运行。那么我们看到3月下旬以来，中国的经济开始企稳回升走出一个企稳回升的过程。我们所了解到的，比如说我们还做这个大宗商品市场的统
We also have statistical data on commodities. If you look at the market statistics of commodities in March, the total market sales increased by 99.9%, grew by 9, and for March, it's 10.1%. So that reflects the China's economy's rallying process. Also, we are also following closely the market prices of commodities. The prices have been declining, although compared with the same period of last year, the price level is declining, but month on month, the price level is picking up, especially since April. The first week of April, the second week of April, 2 weeks in consecutive fashion, the commodities prices have been rallying. For example, copper, non-ferrous metals, steel, and chemical raw materials. Only some products prices didn't pick up. So from this perspective, you can see the market is showing a trend of stabilizing and rallying, and this trend is very obvious since March. And the third observation of the China's economy is the turning for the better in the stabilized fashion is showing a more obvious trend, mainly reflected in two aspects. First, the good factors for economic growth are increasing. The first factor is the rallying of small and medium-sized enterprises. The small enterprises. According to PMI, small enterprises PMI has been rallying for 2 consecutive months, and this is quite different from previously. It has been rallying in February and March. That means the endogenous growth demand or growth drivers are on the rise in China, and this is of vital importance to the economic growth. And the second aspect is we have noticed, according to our anticipatory index, one is the enterprise activity anticipation index. This index is also picking up. For example, manufacturing industry, the index is back to more than 60, and also more than 60 for service industry, and more than 60 for construction industry compared with February. So you can see enterprises' expectations of the market are very high. So the Chinese economy is showing a positive trend. And certainly, we also feel the international environment is also turning for the better. And this will also have an important support for China's economic growth. So there are also some other aspects, but through the observations I mentioned just now, you can see since March, China's economy is turning for the better. And secondly, China's economic growth quality has also been improving, mainly shown in two aspects. First, in the process of economic growth, labor employment has been stabilizing and also increasing. In PMI index, there is a active population index or employment index. If you look at this index, it has been rallying since March, especially for the service industry. Therefore, despite the fact that China's economic growth rate may slow down, but the employment index is rallying. That is to say, China's economic growth quality is turning for the better. The second aspect to support this is the further optimization of restructuring towards the expected direction. Especially in this year, the changes are very noticeable. For example, the economic structure. If you can see this through the PMI index. Manufacturing PMI in March was 50.3, the lowest point, but still above 50. For service industry, it has reached more than 52, and also the construction industry's PMI index is even higher in March, more than 60. There are also some season factors because after March, construction industry will reach gradually the peak season because the weather is warmer and warmer. For the construction industry, this is good. So you can see in the process of economic restructuring, the development of the service industry has played a more important role in China's economic growth. From that perspective, you can see the economic restructuring is showing a better quality towards our desired direction. And second, within the manufacturing industry, the structure has also been optimizing. We noticed currently the sectors where economic growth has been slowing down is mainly the raw materials industries or raw material sectors with overcapacity and huge consumption of energy and heavy pollution. Because PMI index does not include the excavation sectors, for example, coal and iron ores. But these sectors, from the growth perspective, these sectors' growth has been slowing down. On the other hand, the equipment and machinery manufacturing industry, the growth is better than expected, especially in the automobile industry. Later, we'll have experts to give you more details on this industry. But according to China Automobile Association, the first quarter production and sales have increased by 9%, both higher than the GDP growth rate of the country, especially in March. The production has reached 2.2 million vehicles, a newest record high. So if you look at the structure within a certain industry, it is also optimizing and developing towards the high-end sector. This will be an important driver and foundation for the future steady and moderately fast growth of China. So if you so through the optimizing structures, you can see China's economic growth quality is improving. Uh, all in all, although there is a downward tendency for China's economic growth, but its growth quality is getting better. So there are a lot of factors for us to be optimistic. That is the first part of my remarks. And second, we should also follow very closely the phenomenon of downward tendency. Some call it downward pressures. No matter what, the major factors incurring China's economic downward tendency is mainly from the demand side. For example, export demand, not a major problem, especially although there was a decline in March. But if you look at the whole year, export demand to support the goal for the whole year, that is equivalent growth rate of GDP is realizable. And for consumers industry, especially with the development of e-commerce, online shopping has generated a lot of market demand. But you cannot see that through the stats because of some information's missing in the statistics. If you also factor these things into the statistics, consumption demand will not be low. In the restructuring process, investment demand is relatively weak. Therefore, if you look at the policy directions, if for investment demand, you can gradually release some already planned investment projects. Then this will support China's economy to maintain steady growth. And the relevant government authorities are following closely such things and taking active measures. Taken as a whole, in view of the current economic faring of China, although there was a slowdown of the growth, but employment has been increasing and the structures are optimizing. So we think if you look at the faring of Chinese economy, a 7 to 7.5% growth rate is a reasonable growth rate range, and we have the conditions to realize that growth rate. And this is also a sustainable growth rate. If you look at it from the sustainability perspective, days ago at Boao Asia Forum, Premier Li Keqiang has mentioned such factors. He mentioned the drivers and space for economic growth of China in the future. And through his speech, you can see sustainable, sound, and steady growth of China's economies have the grounds, have the conditions there. He mentioned the reform. Reform is one of the drivers. Through the reforms, we can unleash the development potentials of China's domestic market. And I think a lot of Chinese entrepreneurs know this very clearly. Due to the time constraint, I don't want to elaborate. And recently, for example, small and micro enterprises or small and medium-sized enterprises, their operations and management are turning for the better recently. That reflects the delegation of power, the relaxation of administrative licensing or examination and approval is showing its effects. So in China, second, Premier Li has mentioned we must conduct structural adjustments to drive economic growth, especially industrial restructuring, so that we can have some emerging industries with very high labor productivity to promote China's economic growth, so that we can have more space for industrial growth. And we have the conditions there in China. He also mentioned the option of structural adjustments for driving economic growth. Although China's economy is growing very well taken as a whole, but there are a very big regional difference. For example, eastern and coastal areas are developing very fastly, but mid and western regions are not developing fast enough. There are huge potentials, so we must have regional adjustments to unleash the potentials of the development of middle and western regions. And thirdly, he mentioned the urban-rural structural adjustments. That is, through modern, advanced urbanization development or integrated development of urban and rural areas to have space for integrated development of urban and rural areas. He mentioned through structural adjustments to provide more space and advantages for China's growth. And thirdly, he also mentioned livelihood efforts to drive economic growth of China. And this is also a new concept. Livelihood projects. One of the development goals is to improve people's livelihood. And through Premier Li's speech at the Boao Forum, you can see improvement of livelihood of people is also a driver of China's economic growth. For example, through addressing employment, through improving their livelihood, through improving their employment, we can foster the development of more small and medium-sized or micro enterprises. So the roadmap is very clear. Through improving people's livelihood, we can create more space for China's economic growth. And finally, regarding the drivers of opening openness to the outside world.
中间第一个
And Li Keqiang, the premier, also pointed this out. He talked about the relationship between China and other Asian countries, and we needed to set up a interest community and a faith community and a development community. And through opening up, we hope we can form new drivers out of these opening up. Out of opening up, we can create harmonious interest community with stakeholders from the outside world. Then this enjoys still great potentials. Therefore, China's development is linked to the development of Asia and of the world. And the world's development also needs development in China as well. So we are the faith community, responsibility community, and interest community. Li Keqiang talking about the relationship between China's economy and world economy and Asian economy. He suggested a Silk Road maritime and to set up economic development belts and also important channels between China and other countries. And the government has also adopted different measures so that China and other countries can form interest communities. We have very clear thinking on this. All in all, the sustainable and healthy development of China needs, we have good conditions and we have a good foundation as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cai. Very good and interesting opening discussion, giving us an overview of the Chinese economic development. Next up, to give an overview from more international association, the Association for the European Car Makers, I'd like to welcome to the stage Mats Harborn, who's the head of the Commercial Vehicle Division of ACEA, and also from Scania. Mr. Harborn.
Thank you. Good morning. I will talk about the role of the automotive industry in society, and I think a change that we are seeing in the responsibility that the industry has to take as a whole for the complete system. I have been following the Chinese automotive industry in China since 1982. And in order to understand the background, I will do a historic recap of what has happened in the Chinese economy as a general, and also about the automotive industry and some of the challenges that we are facing. We need to start by understanding what is a market economy. A market economy is like a gas. A market economy fills up any gap that is available. When China started its open door policy back in the early 80s, there were gaps everywhere. And what most actors in the market have been preoccupied with is to be the first mover in each of these gaps, or to follow in the gaps, and to ensure that you can maintain a good market position. That is the force of the market economy. Now, for all of us sitting in this room, foreigners or Chinese, no one could anticipate that the growth of the economy that we've seen in the last 35 years would be what it was. And because of this, most players have been extremely busy trying just to maintain their positions and grow with the market, because this cake has truly grown. I think also China's leaders and China in general has been set aback by the tremendous developments in this market. China has, since the early 80s, gone from being an insignificant economy in the global perspective to today being the second largest economy in real terms and the largest trading nation. If you go back in time, Deng Xiaoping started this journey by attracting foreign investments. Foreign investments were seen as a driver of the economy. And to do that, in order to make foreign investors safe with the environment, he started by writing a number of foreign investment laws to protect foreign interests in China. That started a snowballing effect. And no one could even fathom that when China entered the WTO, that snowball effect would continue even more. Now, in this growing cake, there have been new niches and there have been new gaps to fill out by the market economy. So we've seen that the economy has been growing, and we've all been very busy keeping pace with the growth. Now, the economy has to be regulated somehow, and the government has tried its best to keep up with the rule-making to create frameworks within the economy should develop. But speed has been very high. The challenge for the government has been very big. There has not always been access to perfect information. There's not always been enough experience. And there have been, of course, a number of vested interests that have tried to set rules and regulations to favor their own interests. So all of this now, this growth, and the problems in regulating the economy have now caught up with the country. The cost of this extreme development is being felt now in terms of a deteriorating environment. We've seen an exploitation of finite resources. We've seen safety issues, dwindling returns on investments, and so on. And if we go to our industry, we can see that cities are now suffering also from the huge amount of cars traveling on the roads in the cities. The effect has been severe air pollution, clogged roads, traffic accidents, a high cost of public transportation systems, and so on. So now, as Mr. Cai said, now more and more people are asking, so what is the development that we were looking for? Did this create a better livelihood for all of us living in the country? Traffic is sometimes slower than driving on a bike, and the air cannot be breathed. And the traffic situation is now a bit unsafe, and people are hesitant to take the bike to drive, to go to work, even though it might be faster than the car. Now, local city governments and the central government are taking big measures, sometimes draconian measures, to combat these problems. We see, for example, that very strict emission standards are being introduced, both nationally, and some cities like Beijing are walking in front of the rest of the pack. Also out on the highways between the cities, the government has had to try to enforce stricter rules, for example, to restrict overloading. But still, the problems are huge, and we're now seeing cities introducing restrictions to limit the sales of cars in the cities. So at this time, we can see that if no more strong measures are taken, such restrictions on the sales of cars may actually slow down the growth of the automotive industry in China. So what should we do then? Well, at this time, it's appropriate to take a systemic approach, an integrated approach to solving these problems. And we need to get the multi-stakeholder participation and alignment of all the participants for common goals and common visions. If not, as I said, there is a risk that the market will not grow as quickly as we are hoping for. Now, let me give some very concrete examples of this sort of integrated thinking. A city, for example. Roads are congested, of course, for one reason, that there are many cars on the roads, but that is not the only reason. If you look at how the road infrastructure is designed, if it's designed in the wrong way, it restricts the flow of cars on the roads. We can see, for example, here in Beijing, very irrational designs of exit and entries onto ring roads. We see poor management of red and green lights. We see irrational design of crossroads. We see lack of bus stops, so buses are stopping and congesting the traffic behind them. We have this rule that you are allowed to turn right at the red light, which again causes congestion of passengers and makes passengers very pedestrians, and makes pedestrians very stressed when crossing the roads. All of this adds up to a slow flow of traffic. And as we all know, an idling car is a polluting car. A car that moves is emitting less emissions. Now, if a systemic approach is not taken, then there is a risk that even more cities will take measures to restrict the number of cars sold in the streets. Now, the car industry has taken its responsibility if we look at the emission levels. If we look at emission index, one car today corresponds to the emissions of a car, of 20 cars some 15 years ago. If you look at the truck industry, the emissions per ton kilometer have been reduced by 50% in the last 20 years, and we expect another 50% reduction in the next 10 years. If we go back to the cities, of course, we all also want to see that more passengers, more pedestrians, or more people are using public transportation. But to do that, the public transportation network needs to be very efficient. It needs to be balanced. We need to have all modes of transport working towards an efficient mobility of people in the city. Now, again, Chinese cities are taking very big measures to combat this issue and are building extensive networks of subways. However, the balance of this public transportation expansion is unbalanced. We are seeing 95% of all resources going into subways, whereas only 5% are left for buses. The effect is that the buses are uncomfortable, too few, too congested. If you want to take the underground, it is also congested. A much fairer balance would be to continue the expansion of subways, but at the same time, you have to also expand the use of efficient city buses. Perhaps 80-20, 80% of the budget to subway and 20% of buses would alleviate both the roads from car users and the subway from people who have no other choice. Using modern buses, it's also possible, of course, to introduce biofuels, which will immediately reduce the emissions dramatically in the cities. But we are all looking at, and this is the way that China developed. Up until now, most people using their cars use them to drive in the suburban areas. But a car is a tool for freedom. A car is something we use to explore the world. And we are now seeing Chinese users of cars driving out of the cities, out into other provinces, into remote provinces. We see a number of TV programs also exploring this. And this is very exotic. And this is the way the car should be used. However, when you come out on the highways, the new car users get very worried. Because what do you see? Well, you see highways clogged with substandard trucks. Trucks that have not been through proper annual inspections, trucks that are overloaded, too wide, too long. It's unsafe. This is now increasing the awareness that the whole traffic system, no matter if it's in the city or if it's out in between the cities, is a system that needs to work. So what can we do then? We need to take a systemic approach. We need to look at how all of these things are integrated, or how they're interacting. We need to have an infrastructure that allows for a free flow of vehicles. We need to have much better education of our drivers, both drivers of passenger cars and of trucks. We need better education of all road users, people using bikes and pedestrians. We all need to interact in a way to make our common traffic situation safe for all of us. Now, I started by talking about the market economy being a gas. And all of us, we have been very busy trying to get into the gaps, trying to protect our market positions and grow with the market. But now we come to a point where it is our joint responsibility as actors in this market, as manufacturers, as service providers, as regulators, as drivers, as pedestrians, and so on, as media, to align our goals, to set the goal. China should not only be the biggest automotive market in the world, China should be the best. And to be the best, we all need to work together. Now, from the automotive industry, we are fully committed to be a part of that integrated, holistic discussion with all actors in the market to create the vision of the best automotive market in China. Thank you all.
Thank you once again, Mr. Harborn, for giving us some examples of other influences on logistics and on the Chinese automotive industry. Next up, one of the most important government organizations, I'd like to welcome to the stage Ms. Wang Huimin, Vice President of the Economic Operation Bureau of the NDRC, the National Development and Reform Commission. Thank you.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is a great pleasure to be here at this conference. First of all, on behalf of NDRC, Economic Operation Bureau, and the Interagency Meetings Secretariat on this, to congratulate this conference for its convocation. Over the past several years, automobile consumption has been maintained at a very fast growth. It has been a major driver of structural adjustments and maintaining steady growth. Automobiles' important role has become more and more prominent. I hope today's conference in reform and innovations of the automobile and logistics industry can have fruitful results, and I wish this conference a complete success. According to the assignments given to me, I would like to share with you some of the status quo and thoughts for next steps. First of all, status quo of operations of China's logistics industry. In 2013, with the macroeconomy stabilizing its growth, China's logistics industry is turning for the better while maintaining steady growth with better structural adjustments, showing the following characteristics. First, logistic demand is maintained at it has maintained a high growth rate, but demand has become more diversified. Last year, total logistics realized more than 198 trillion yuan. For example, steel and coal commodities logistics demand has been sluggish. However, faster-moving consumer goods, food, medicines, automobiles, etc., these products related to consumption, demand is very high. And second, the private sector's logistic enterprises growth has been growing very fastly. State-owned logistic enterprises growth has been steady, and traditional warehousing and transportation business growth has been slow, but innovative business, for example, supply chain management, logistic information platforms, community logistics services, and express delivery service have been developing very rapidly. Especially express delivery service industry has maintained very high growth rate. Last year, this industry delivered 9.19 billion pieces, growth rate of more than 25%. And last year, logistic industry's total revenue increased by 9.2% year-on-year. Added value realized increased by 8.5% year-on-year, and logistics industry's added values share in GDP reached 6.8%, the same level of last year. Its share in service industry it reached 14.8%. And thirdly, the profitability of enterprises is not optimistic. According to surveys of major logistic enterprises in the first 10 months of last year, these enterprises' core business revenue increased by 5.3% year-on-year. The profit margin was only 4.1% of core business, a decline of 0.9 percentage points, lower than the average profit margin of the core business of the industries. And logistics profit margin has been maintained at a very low rate because the service prices are very hard to be higher, but the cost has been increasing, so enterprises must have innovations in management and cost reduction to get a higher profit margin. And even there is more hot money going into the logistics industry. For example, city capital, a lot of companies have invested in express delivery and logistics. And PROS is also increasing its investment in the land of logistics and warehousing. Alibaba, JD.com, very famous e-commerce enterprises are also building their own logistics distribution centers and systems. This will have far-reaching influence on the future layout landscape of logistics industry. And steel and real estate companies are also identifying opportunities in logistics industry. Some large manufacturers and trading companies are realigning their logistic facilities and established third-party logistic providers companies. So in the future, competition will be fiercer in this market. And fifthly, various logistic platforms are more and more active. Some people say a platform economy era has come. In recent years, in the logistics industry, this is more and more obvious trend. Various platforms through business flow, financial transactions, payment, and logistic functions are quickly integrating marketing and other resources as agglomerators or aggregators. In road freight transportation, Zhejiang Changhua and Guangzhou Lingan, these road dry ports have integrated thousands of small enterprises and millions of vehicles, which have greatly reduced the cost and integrated the industry further. And they are also expanding to the whole country through chain stores. Some logistics and distribution enterprises have also established e-commerce platforms to combine online and offline. So logistics and trade are mutually promoting each other with good results. Huaikwang Logistics had a supply chain management model based on their e-commerce transaction platform to transmit information, physical and capital flow. To combine the three flows in steel logistics, they combined online sales and offline and closing last year. Strengthened development reached 6.5 million tons. This year, there will be another major through. And sixthly, the transformation and upgradations pace has been accelerated. A lot of logistics enterprises began to make innovations to transform. Some bellwether enterprises are using IT technologies to integrate social resources in a low cost to optimize and expand their layout of outlets to transform from logistic provider to supply chain manager, management service provider. Some express delivery service companies have provided office services of same-day delivery and next-day arrival. And logistics enterprises service system in tier 2, 3, 4 cities are also optimizing. While realizing steady growth, we have also seen some long-term headaches of the logistics industry have not been addressed very well. For example, the logistics cost has been very high, but the profit margin of logistics service providers have been very low. Over the past several years, the total logistic cost and its share in GDP has been, the ratio is around 15%, almost twice, 2 times that of US and Japan. At the same time, logistics enterprises' core business profit margin is basically below 5%. This will affect the sustainability of the industry. And also, competition sometimes is unfair. A lot of dishonesty enterprises on the market. And thirdly, logistics in the whole value chain is at a passive position, is not playing its fundamental role. And fourthly, some management models and policies currently are restricting the fast development of the industry. They are not suitable for modern service industry, especially integrated and network type and industries development. About the next steps, the third plenum of the 18th Party Congress has set orientations for reforms. It has said we must let the market forces to play a decisive role in allocation of resources and give a better play to government role. For logistics industry with full competition, we should rack our brains to let the market forces to play the decisive role in allocating resources. Government is only to play a role of providing the enabling environment and have a leveled playing field. About the next steps, we have been conducting research, and we want to have more relaxation of control and give more rather than take more. For example, we want to reduce logistic cost and increase operational efficiency. In light of the high cost and low efficiency problems of the logistics industry of China, we must pay much attention to the market forces' decisive role in allocating resources and the government role in creating an enabling environment. First, we must regulate and improve the toll collection policies for roads to reduce the cost for vehicles. And second, we should optimize logistics management model uh, to have co-delivery to reduce the cost of last mile delivery. And third, we should have a good division of labor to give full play to the different factors of logistics industry. And fourthly, we should make more use of ICT technologies to reduce the cost by providing public platforms so that we can increase the efficiency and quality of logistics. Secondly, we should enable logistics industry to play its fundamental role in the national strategy. We should consider the layout and construction of logistics industry while we are developing economy of laying out the strategy. We should promote regional integration of logistics and international logistics development. While we are transforming and upgrading the manufacturing industry, we should give full play to the fundamental and supportive role of logistics. And thirdly, we should make efforts to create a unified and competitive market order to break down the local protection barriers so that we can have open market across the country, have more delegation of power, reduce the items of examination and approval, and increase the market openness of market sectors with natural monopoly so that all the market players can have equal access to resources. At the same time, we should regulate the law enforcement behavior so that we can have a level playing field on the market. And we should also increase the credit reference system of the logistics industry to have a cleaner market. And fourthly, we should be problem-oriented to adjust and optimize the management models and policies to address the problems complained most by enterprises that are the biggest bottlenecks. For example, urban logistics management model is not scientific. It is very hard for logistic vehicles to have access to city roads. And second, enterprise network development is restricted by policies. So we should make breakthroughs in these problems to break down the barriers of the current policy so that we can breathe new vitality into the market players. to have sound development of the industry. Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, we are pleased to see that in terms of the goals and orientations of sound and steady and sustainable development of the logistics industry, a lot of people have reached a consensus on such goals. We have the confidence to, in line with the requirements of the third plenum of the 18th Party Congress, with the concerted efforts of all stakeholders to accelerate the transformation and upgradation of China's logistics industry to have an upgraded version of China's logistics industry to make our contributions to our economic and social growth, development, and people's livelihood improvements. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Wang. And it's great to see such a positive attitude from the NDRC, working hard for our industry to develop the industry in the correct way. There's still perhaps more questions than answers, but at least there is a focus to try and make sure automotive logistics, but also automotive logistics and supply chain develops in a forward-looking way. Next up, I'd like to welcome to the stage Vice President of CFLP, Mr. Dai Dingyi. Thank you.
各位嘉宾、各位朋
Distinguished
友，大家上午好。
delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. What I'm going to talk about is China's logistics development and trend. And it's my personal observation. Madam Wang talked already about logistic development. I'm just going to supplement to what her said and be more focused on automotive logistics. Because most of you are from automotive logistics. Automotive logistics is closely linked to the automotive industry. According to statistics, 80% or more of logistics should be carried or has something to do with automotive vehicles. Secondly, logistics methodology and technology is originated from the automotive industry, whether it's the streamlined production from the Ford and GIT from Toyota. They all contributed to the development of the logistic industry in technology, in new notions. And therefore, automotive industry is still the source of inspirations, ideas for logistics. I'll be talking about two things mainly. One is the new developments of logistic industry related to the automotive industry. Secondly, I'll be talking about market development related to logistics and automotive logistic industry regarding policies which will guide us into the future. So for my first part, that is a new development of logistics industry and the market. Several things we need to pay attention to. One is some statistics which can give us some understanding. 7.7% GDP growth and freight forwarding growth 9.9%, and also the turnover of freight transportation increased by 7.3%. It's very similar to GDP growth, but because the shorter distance in logistics, in recent years we saw the average distance decreased from 432 to 414 kilometers, which showed that the structure of the market is changing, and short haul is increasing and the long haul is decreasing. And secondly, be talking about the truck transportation increased by 11.3%. Truck transportation increased the quickest. Highway transportation or freight forwarding increased 12.7. And by looking at the sales of trucks and the production of trucks last year, the production of trucks was 3.46 million units, increased by 7%, and Sales was 3.49 million units, increased by 5%. And heavy duty, though the production was 700,000 and increased by 28%. Sales was 770,000, increased by 21%. So the contribution was mainly from heavy-duty trucks. Looks like there is a conflict. On one hand, we say that there are more short hauls, but on the other hand, we say that sales of heavy duties increased. How can we explain that? According to experts, last year, heavy-duty trucks increase in sales and production was due to a policy. That is, the countries to introduce a Euro 4 emission standard. And so the standard was delayed, actually, and people have been waiting. And when people say that, when see that the delayed Euro 4 introduction, that would accelerate people to buy Euro 3 standard vehicles or trucks. So that's the reason behind. So that's according to the data. And secondly, let's look at the changes in the logistic industry. And two parts. One is we call it basic services, including the forwarding and express mail and transportation, and it's quite fragmented for years. But now in recent years we also see accelerated integration of different kinds. For example, integration of assets. So for big forwarding companies, they have become more competitive, like Shunfeng and Debang. They are the forwarding companies, and they are growing powerful. And once that the size set it all, and but now it's different. We see that some companies are standing out because of its asset size and because of its standards and the whole system. And so they are acquiring other companies. And So they are they are acquiring and merging other people's assets. And thirdly, we see more alliances. And we see that there are dedicated routes in the forwarding business. But now we see integration of the routes by setting up alliances. For example, Anneng, Taxing Tianxia, because Taxing Tianxia, they are Anneng and Taxing Tianxia, these two forwarding companies. Their total turnover is 2 billion RMB, and smaller players are joining them in this alliance. And also, we see also quite sporadic regional, a local logistic network, but at the same time, we also see better integration. There are integration between feeder and trunk routes in different regions. So the basic logistics is getting into accelerated pace in integration. Another market, what we call the specialized logistics, and for specialized logistic companies, their focus is to provide services for certain industries according to certain standards and processes. And the different specialized logistics serving manufacturers, serving OEMs or agriculture, they are revamping their infrastructure, they are revamping their processes and their network. The main direction is them for them to be combined, to be integrated into the supply chain for the industry. So there are better collaboration in the whole process in the supply chain, and refined control and more added value services, and they have a better refined control and better added value, and the gross margin could be 30 to 50%. For the so-called retail forwarding, it's only 5% gross margin. And one thing stood out is e-commerce. For e-commerce, they have outsourced logistics, or they set up their own logistic system. And therefore, e-commerce is driving the modern logistics of China. This is very obvious. Also, cold chain on the medical logistics is developing very quickly with strong support from the government because they are about safety. The government as a regulator has responsibilities and safety about food, about medical products. There are more stringent regulations, more stringent new laws, and that would give a push to the cold chain logistics and medical logistics. So these two specialized logistics are hotspots currently. And lastly, be talking about the enterprise logistics. They are certainly dedicated, but they are being socialized. They have become more important for the logistic industry, and we our logistic companies are usually general logistics, but they are not very well integrated with enterprise logistics. But now the enterprise logistics are providing services for different parties, and we see this trend already. Certainly, be talking about the reliance on science and technology as a core competence. Because in the past, China's logistic market was quite fragmented and disorderly. You need background, you need connection with the government. So people did not emphasize technology, IT, advanced equipment, but we see a big change now. In the past 2 years, with a downturn in the economy, we see more inputs in IT, in advanced equipment. We see increased investment in capital like this, IT and equipment. Some logistic companies, some equipment companies, they have backlog orders to supply the equipment for the logistic industry. And secondly, we see new technology. For example, the modularized equipment and multimodal transportation, and also the rural technology, and so The technology will make modularization easier, and it will be a revolution. Multi-model model has becoming more widely deployed, and enterprises started to promote rural and, for example, in highway transportation, different enterprises just realized that for long haul, you need to have 2 or 3 drivers, but they take up lots of your profits. If you have only one driver and the radius is only 500 to 800 distance kilometers, so you need a relay. You need relays. And so this is for better profitability, with no support from the government, with no support from favorable policies. But we see these kind of relay cases more and more.
They are following the technology development orientations to explore drop and pull or relay transport with very good division of labor. One thing I would like to highlight is logistics equipment ICT application requirements are higher and higher. A lot of you are from automobile industry or from in addition to automobiles, we also need to have pallets, trays, containers, or forklifts, a lot of other equipment in addition to vehicles. In addition to the basic functions, there are higher and higher requirements of information functions for precision, automated, or intelligent management of logistics. The application of ICT technologies has become the key, and also for energy saving, emission reduction, energy efficiency improvements. These are also become orientations for enterprises development for public good. Years ago or in previous industrial policies by the government, would have more direct interventions on how the industry should develop. For example, they will have the so-called supportive or encouraging policies out of good desire, but have interrupted the market order. Therefore, there are a lot of safety or pollution problems. Now things have changed. We can see government policies are more and more inclined to public good protection, for example, low carbon, low emission, energy saving. Through such policies, they will directly affect or influence the development of this industry. And later we will see the guidance provided by such policies towards this industry. Only in this way can we align the public interest with the interests of the enterprises, so that when enterprises are pursuing profits, they can also protect the public interests. Only such policies are called policies in market economy for public good. I have talked about the major changes in the market, and looking ahead into the future, I would like to show you some policy outlooks. First of all, a marketization reform. The third plenum of the 18th Party Congress has made it very clear, sent a clear message that market will play a decisive role in allocating resources, and the government should mind its own business. Against this backdrop, we will see efforts sticking to structural adjustments. And in terms of industrial transformation and upgradation, regulation, there will be more regulation policies in that regard. And direct interventions by the government will be reduced. Marketization reform will be accelerated. The so-called supportive, favorable policies will be reduced to maintain a level playing field on the market. For market mechanism, one word is very important: fairness. So long as it destroys or damages the fairness, the policy will not be sustained. If the policy take this into consideration, then without damaging fairness or damaging fair competition, can the policies offer very good guidance to the market. And compensations will be made for lack of attention to public good and livelihood. What government is supposed to do? That is, let the government mind its own business. In addition to ensuring market fairness, the government should do more in protecting public interests, basic public interests, and people's livelihood. So in the future, there will be more and more such policies that will be released into the rules of game of the market. And openness, be it openness to domestic market or to the outside world. We have Shanghai FTA, free trade zone, as an experimental zone, and the government has said this is designed to accumulate experience to roll out in the whole country, not just one zone. One experiment is about national treatment. That is to address market fairness. That is, all the enterprises within China are national enterprises, be it foreign invested or domestic invested. And second, the government is supposed to mind its own business. A negative list, according to Premier Li, no longer, so long as it is not prohibited by law, you can do it. So long as it is not authorized by law, the government should not do it. So this is what we mean by the negative list. These two rules will become the rules that will be followed in openness. This is the general background. For those policies specifically related to logistics, I can mention one or two. First, business tax to become VAT tax. This transformation has the biggest influence on transportation or logistic industry. At the operational level, there are one problem or another, so it is very hard to make the transformation from business tax to VAT, but it is the general trend. This transformation is a measure, one of the measures to have structural tax cuts. That is to say, the government has realized that the burden on enterprises is too heavy. There should be some tax cuts, but it is not a general tax cut, but a structural one. So business tax to transform and become VAT tax is such a measure. At the same time, it is also a change of mechanism. That is to say, the previous calculation method of tax will be based on will be changed from based on total amount to be based on value added. That is to say, you only pay tax for the value you contributed. Previously, with business tax, one more link of division of labor, there will be one more tax. But it's restricted division of labor. But division of labor is an impetus for growth, especially in the service industry. Service industry has different sectors created through division of labor. If the tax system is not reformed, it is very hard to promote division of labor. Therefore, in order to promote more detailed division of labor and promote service industry, for example, outsourcing industry, there must be the tax system reform. This is good for the goods owners. Previously, their tax cannot be credited. Now, some of the amount can be credited. They don't have to pay that much. That is to say, if they can outsource, they can have some tax credits. This is very good. And through this business tax transformation to become VAT, it has turned the local tax to national tax because local tax regulatory mechanisms are different. They have different favorable treatments. But if it is become a national tax, nationwide tax, it can foster an integrated nationwide market to come into birth. So with the mature, with the tax system become more and more mature, its negative impact on the enterprises will be reduced. This tax will be more fair. So long as the tax is fair, its negative impact will be gradually offset. We are afraid of unfair policies. So you can see the positive role of transformation of business tax to VAT. And we have confidence to travel through this transitional period smoothly. And also regarding energy saving and environmental protection, this is also having a direct influence on the transport and logistics industry. Recently, the government has increased efforts to treat pollution, to address pollution, especially smog. And this year, the Premier has made it very clear that we must address the washout issue of 6 million yellow label vehicles, the elimination of 6 million yellow label vehicles. At the same time, the country will roll out the China 4 diesel standard. But first, we need to address the supply issue of diesel. Previously, due to lack of supply, China 4 standard was not released. In addition, for major polluting regions, especially Beijing, Tianjin, and Hebei regions, regarding smog, there is very clear requirements. That is, within 3 years in this region, you must reduce PM 2.5 emissions by 25% within the 3 years. We only have 3 years, and now we have a big challenge. I don't want to go into details about each policy, but centering around smog treatment and emission control, the government has made a strong resolve to see immediate results in the short term. And these are policy orientations we should follow closely in our industry because it will have a lot of impact. Of course, another thing is national planning for industry. And the ACEA Ministry of Transport have adopted the 2013 to 2030 plan on highways. For example, the layout and the supply of highways to address congestion problems. Another major change is the railway systems reform. This reform will directly affect the layout, the landscape of roads, highways, so we should also follow such policies very closely. Also, CFLP has been actively participating in offering suggestions and surveys of this sector of public government policies. So we have been making some suggestions and conducting some surveys for government policies in logistics and transport. Due to the time constraint, I don't want to go into details. These are some of our surveys or some of our proposals to the government. And finally, conclusions of my presentation. First of all, China's logistics market will continue to maintain its growth momentum, but the opportunities offered by structural adjustment will be bigger than the opportunities offered by large-scale expansion. Second, there will be more dependence on technology progress and the combination of logistic equipment and in the ICT technologies will become a major trend. And third, safety, energy saving, environmental protection will become important directions affecting or influencing the development of logistic industry. And fourthly, the deepening of the reform will promote standardization of the market, openness and fairness, but there are a lot of resistant forces and efforts need to be made progressively. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dai. And then the final presentation for this session is probably representing the most important people in the automotive industry in some ways, the customer. So I'd like to welcome to the stage Mr. Luo Lei, Vice Secretary General of the China Automotive Dealers Association. Mr. Luo.
谢谢主持人。
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's my great honor at the invitation of the organizers to be delivering this presentation on this conference. I guess delegates here are related to logistics and to the automotive industry and participants in the supply chain of the automotive industry. Some of you are experts and some are officials. I'd like to talk about the China's auto market development. 3 parts: status quo, challenges, and future trends. So this is the structure of my presentation. Firstly, I'll be talking about the status quo. Status quo, let me summarize. China has entered a stable development stage. As to existing problems, there are many too. One is the utilization of the capacity and the conflicts between supply and demand. Secondly, the role of automobiles in the harmonious development of the society. And then I'll be talking about the future trends. Let me talk about some new changes in the auto market. We heard from previous speaker, PM 2.5. We heard the development of the economy. We know that the first quarter's data got released this morning by the State Statistical Bureau, and 7.4 and lower than 7.5 as forecasted. And also, I'll be talking about some deepened reform new measures introduced by the third prelim session of the party's Congress. And also, first-tier, second-tier cities, there are some changes in the auto demands. And there are some also conflicts in urban development and in the crude model of economic growth. All these would affect the auto industry. As I mentioned, China's automobile market development got into a stable development. Let's see this chart here with different lines. And there are domestic cars new and imported cars and second-hand car vehicle markets. So you can see 2009, between 2009 and 2011, there are lots of fluctuations. But in recent years, since 2012, we see these lines are getting stabilized. Therefore, from these lines and from the total development of the auto industry, we can see that the high-speed development, for example, 40%, 30% growth rate for certain categories, now has been maintaining at the single-digit growth rate for different categories, imports, second-hand, and new cars. And we also heard from previous speakers that the wholesale of vehicles reached 5.9 million and increased by 9.1%. Passenger cars wholesale was 4.8 million, and increase rate was 10%. According to Statistics Bureau's analysis, the the auto sales value reached 487 billion RMB, increase of 11.5%. Just like the consumables sales growth, which is also 11.8%. And also we see that there is some upgrading in the sales. By looking into the inventory, in March it decreased to 44.5%. So inventory is in a reasonable range. So for the first quarter, the auto market has been developing quite fairly stably and healthily in the first quarter. And this chart, or these two charts, are about the current vehicle populations. And by looking into the figures, the total population of vehicles reached 126 million units. If you look on the right, what conclusion can you make? In recent years, including when the auto market was growing very slowly, 2011 and 2012, but we saw that even in those years we saw an increase in the total population of vehicles, and so the market is quite saturated. And some experts pointed out that they have different arguments about how many can be sold out of 1 year, and some say it's 70, some say 40, and some say 30, some say 25 million units per year. And in 2011 in Chengdu, there was an international forum, and a Nobel laureate, he pointed out that China's sales can reach 70 million per year. I do not know whether you believe it or not, but I do not believe what he said. By looking into the rapid growth in vehicle population, what does it lead to? It leads to saturation of the market. This is number one. Number two is the after sales services has become more important. For example, replacement of your vehicle, and thirdly is increased costs for owning a vehicle, especially if you are from Beijing, from Shanghai, for parking, for example, whether it's in your neighborhood or in your closer to your company, you need to pay a higher parking costs. And secondly, I'll be talking about some current problems. So why I say that there is a conflict between production capacity, release, and demand. And in 2010, different OEMs, 12 OEMs, they talked about their forecast for sales 5 years later, and here I summarized their objectives. Their objectives plus together reached 40 million units according to their objectives, and that gave me some alarm. I'm not so optimistic as they were, and in comparison with the performance, we see that the network expansion is faster than the growth of the automotive market. According to a consultancy firm, according to it, by 2011, the expansion of the network increased by 11%. Into 2012, the distribution network increased by 16.6%. and we saw 4% and 2% and 4% sales increase respectively in these 2 years. So sales increase and the distribution network increase are not hand in hand. And next, we'll be talking about the contradiction between harmonious social development and the auto industry. And we heard from our European friend, the previous speaker, Mats, he talked about restrictions of sales in different cities. And due to environmental concerns, they are putting restrictions on sales. One is restriction on sale, on purchase. The other is on sales. And for the first tier cities, Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou and Shenzhen, the Auto Industry Society warned some cities about the possible introduction of restrictions, and 2 cities now got covered by the restrictive policies, and more cities would be covered by the restrictive policies. And second restriction is a restriction of movements. This is my data from August last year. It's a great pity. What do I mean by so-called restriction of mobility? That is by putting a curb on the emission standards. So if you are a vehicle from other city, you have to meet the local emission standard, Beijing, for example, and Hebei province. And for purchasing a new vehicle, you have to meet National 4 standard. And it also has a stringent standard on second-hand vehicles. It has to meet Euro 5 before a second-hand vehicle can move into its province. It affects the second-hand mobilities of movements, and it also affects the whole auto industry. I won't give too much details here. Regarding the future, what kind of trends will we see? This is a topology diagram. Some keywords. One is new renewable energy, and the other is post-90s and telematics and e-commerce, and also after sales market, and also the downward trend of distribution channels, and by looking at this diagram, for example, if we put cities into first tier, second tier, third tier, for the first tier, the total population is 11% of the total population, but sales take up 1/3 of the sales of automobiles. But the second and the third tier, especially third tier cities, they take up 60% of the population, more than 60%. But the sales of automobiles is not quite 1/3. So we see distribution is getting to lower tiers. So dealers, distributors are getting to county level, lower tiers of cities to increase their sales. And let's look at also the after-sales market. In mature markets, the distribution of profits is like 40% for OEMs. Distribution, they take up 60% of the profits. So the after-sales market has big prospects in profitability. And I did not quite finish this chart. For China, it's the other way around. OEMs got better profitability, distribution got a lower profitability, and you may from logistics, and you feel that you are being squeezed. OEMs want us to decrease logistic costs continuously. So that's why we see that the heavy-duty vehicles are being overloaded, but the overloading is a safety concern. And as to e-commerce, different e-commerce polos they have stimulus measures on holidays, on festivals, and which stimulated their sales. But in the future, I believe e-commerce will be a very important supplement in our sales and sales. Let me talking about the automotive telematics. And telematics is being promoted, and lots of inputs of capitals, and certainly they are experiencing some problems. My time is almost up.
Let's look at the post-90s population. Soon they will become the main stream of our market consumers. They are different from post-70s or post-60s people. They are more diversified. Therefore, for suppliers of the market, you need to tap new demand. Thank you.
For giving us some ideas, perspectives from the dealers and sales perspective. So unfortunately, we've run over time, but I think the presentations were very interesting. So I think it was worth staying and listening. Also, unfortunately, some of our panel members have had to leave a little bit early because there were some important meetings and announcements that are going to be made later on today. So I'd like to thank the panel for giving us a great introduction to so many important areas that definitely affect what we will be talking about over the next 2 days. And if you can join